So I've been thinking lately about the idea of culture and music. It's in my book. A lot of what I wrote about in Slacker combines the culture of the early 90s throughout the decade of the 90s and the music of it, obviously, but it goes all the way back to the early 80s, as a matter of fact. And culture and music to me has always been something that you can't talk about one without the other. The people who write the music that come out in any given time are typically influenced by what's happening around them in the world, society. But recently, people have been asking about the book a lot. It's been about a year now that it's out. Um, it's going to be made into a documentary, and people are talking about that. So I find myself talking about the book not only, though, to Gen X people like myself. Um, there are a lot of Gen Z and Gen Y, and it's so interesting. The Sometimes I take for granted that, especially if you're Gen X, that and or remember everything that happened in the 90s when this music was coming out, the early Seattle music. Um, and so many things were really, really important culturally back then. Um, I mean, we had the Berlin Wall coming down, the OJ case and Chase, Chase first and then Case. Um, David Koresh, the first World Trade Center bombing. Like, lots of things were happening. Um, it's interesting to me that, again, we sort of take it for granted because we lived through it, we remember it, and it's reflected in the music. But when you talk to people who were either just being born in the earlier mid 90s or maybe middle school age, or kids who were born maybe, around 2000 and grew up as the second and third wave of that music, they don't get it. The culture and the music, the combo's not there. They know Nirvana, they know Pearl Jam, they know the names, Rage Against the Machine, Soundgarden, especially now since they just got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But it's not, it's almost like, and I'm starting to realize, and some of this is in the book too, but when I was growing up, I heard about Elvis Presley and the chaos that he caused in the mid 50s. And then, of course, the British invasion, the Beatles, Beatlemania. I didn't live through it. I wasn't alive. It was secondhand. It was third hand. I love a lot of that early music that I wasn't around for. Some of it I still listen to this day. But I wasn't around when it was happening. So the culture, no matter how much of it I read, no matter how much I study, it wasn't there for me, or I wasn't there for it. So trying to explain what was happening in the early 90s when grunge and alternative really took off, when Lollapalooza happened, when Kurt Cobain and Nirvana knocked off Michael Jackson and pop music from the top of the charts, and the global takeover of grunge and hard rock and punk and whatever you want to call it had happened, with all the things happening around us at the time. It was such an incredible time to be alive, such an incredible time to be a kid, or a young adult. It was in my late teens, early 20s. But when you tell people who aren't there, it's like, oh yeah, okay, Nirvana, I know them. Yeah, I know the music. But it was all so much more than that, and that's one of the things I'm most proud about the book, and what people are taking from it is that the culture, the society, the way the world was back then, it was such a big part of the music. Not just the writing and the playing of it, but the way the fans interpreted the music, the way it hit them, how it hit them, because of what was happening in culture. So if you don't have the book, get the book. You can get it on my website. There's a link here in the comments. You can get it on Amazon or anywhere books are sold. But think about, and depending on how old you are too, it'll affect you differently. If you're my age, if you're Gen X, early Gen X, late Gen X, it doesn't matter. You're going to remember most of this stuff. If you're Gen Z or Gen Y, you're not going to remember it because for some of you, you didn't live through it. So it hits a little bit differently. But I'm proud that the book has this historical element to it, that it can remind people like me of everything that had happened and re-listen to the music with that in mind. And then for the people who didn't grow up with it, with, the music because they were too young or not even born, it's a bit of a history lesson, but it ties the music and the culture together. And I think, actually, I know that is one of the reasons that made it so powerful and so strong and so lasting. So give it a shot, get the book, and let me know what you think. Thanks.